A very good afternoon to all of you. Today I'll be doing my seminar 2 on comparative literature crossing borders. An introduction. As a nation progresses into modernity, many issues will arise. Change will always bring about certain problems. As in a developing nation, one major issue that it will face is the challenge of whether or not it should hold on to its traditional way of life or to completely mimic the advanced nations it wants to emulate, forfeiting its culture and roots, which in some cases are oppressive, for example, such as the caste system in India. It is of great importance that in order to address the issues, one must understand what is going on during that time. As such, the happenings during these times are best expressed through the literary texts of these societies. That is where comparative literature comes into play. Through the study of fictions by popular authors who have lived through these events, we can begin to understand what the society went through. Though fictionalized, they are also representation of the people and act as the voice for those who cannot be heard. They tell the story of the struggles of the common folk of the country during that time, so that the outside world can have a glimpse of the inside of the nation and what they went through during such times. By comparing texts of two different countries together, we can also get understanding whether or not the issues faced are just specific to that area or are universal, affecting humanity as a whole throughout the world. The thesis statement. With the two texts, I plan to study the significance of social issues and problems in the stories, which are related to foregoing tradition in the pursuit of progress versus the holding on to traditional values despite progress, which are brought up in the two short stories about two of Asia's present major superpowers, China and Japan, when they were still on their way to be a developed nation, and what the author wishes to portray to the readers to bring awareness about these issues. Articles I'll be taking from Tomoshibi, which is about a small bar located in close proximity to a large, rapidly growing city in Japan. In the story, it tells about the events which take place, which affect the owner Mama-san and his bar girls. And a new bar girl, Momoko, arrives, one with an inferiority complex because of her crossed eyes. But some sort of miracle happens, and she believes her eyes are healed. But in reality, it was the people in the bar who were more sympathetic and welcoming. As such, they did not laugh at her. And then I will also take the text Destination, which is a story about a man, Chen Jin, who is returning to the city of Shanghai after 10 years teaching in a rural area, and looks forward to being reunited with family, which consists of his mother, elder brother, the brother's wife and child, and his younger brother. The family lives together in a cramped quarters, and the introduction of the middle brother into the space creates something of a crisis, especially with his sister-in-law who is unhappy with the current situation. Depressed, Cheng Xin decides to go for a walk, but suddenly realizes that it is not the end of his life. In fact, it's just another transition point. There are still better times ahead. Now we come to the discussion. The background during the story conception is during the time of the Tomoshibi, we can see that the economy of Japan was developing, whereas the destination, China, was having a bit of a economic recession. The political backdrop was the Japanese government was trying to eradicate Western culture and preserve Japanese traditional culture. As such, it could be applied to Ariyoshi's story, a little bar holding on to its original culture, fighting Western influence. And in the destination, the Maoist extreme regimentation of life with a very controlled culture, housing, education. People are forced from the rural to urban areas where the doling out of jobs are all controlled by the central government. The themes. Tomoshibi exhibits the popular view of clinging to traditional values and traditions on the issue of modernization. As we can see how Mama-san refuses to renovate the bar. And in the destination, the struggles of the poor in overpopulated city in China under Chinese communism, also called Maoism. You can see Chen Jin has to move back to Shanghai and all the problems he faces there. Effects of a social and political change. Traditional business still survive in the major cities in Japan, thanks to the Japanese government trying to get rid of the Western values. And in the destination, we can see that China's one child policy, where a statue of a mother and two children had been demolished. Themes in the literature. In Japanese literature, a recurring theme of the struggle between holding on to traditional values and modernization. In Chinese literature, a theme usually discusses modern policies brought by communism and how families try to cope with it while holding on to traditional values. As we can see, both stories have similar issues. Depression in the modern city, which leads to suicide. Unable to cope with modern living. As you can see, the girl Iko had committed suicide 3 weeks ago, prior to the story which happens in Tomoshibi. And in Destination, Chengzin's brother and wife worries that Chengzin will try to do this. As you can see, he even shouted, "Chengzin, you mustn't do anything drastic," at the end of the story. But in reality, Chengzin was actually just having a walk, not going to commit suicide. And then we come to holding on to tradition. You can see that Mama's son refuses to renovate the bar, and Chengzin's mother wants the family together despite living in cramped conditions. It's quite interesting to note that both of these are elderly female matrons of their own little family. Yeah. One in the bar and the other in a real family. Yeah. And we can see that optimistic endings which lead towards holding on and remembering traditional values, which means they're trying to show traditional values in a positive side. Momoko believes her eyes are getting better, but in reality, the patrons do not make fun of her. Because there's a sense of homeliness which is brought by the traditional design of the bar and causes them to be Japanese in what term traditionally polite. And in Chengzin, once he arrives at his future destination, he will have no doubts, troubles, or sense of rootlessness. He only realizes this through meeting his family, coming together as a family traditionally. Only then he realizes about this thing. And we can see that family problems due to the conflict brought by choosing to live in a modern city. Shizu refuses to return to the countryside, but prefers the modern city, thus abandoning her parents back in her village. As you can see in modern society now, most children abandon their parents. Yes, and then we can see that in the destination, family arguments break out because due to not enough space living in Shanghai. And this is quite common also in major big cities around the world, as limited space causes a lot of conflict. And we can also see that living in the city causes misguided pride as a result of emphasis of materialism and money and wealth. The guests at Madam's Bar are insensitive to Momoko. The patrons are usually from the richer backgrounds and have high-paying jobs. And we can see that Chengzin found the superiority and conceit of the Shanghaiites intolerable. We can see that how the Shanghaiites look down on the poor and rural folk. In conclusion, after observing both texts, as far as crossing borders are concerned, both center around some major turmoil which are faced by the current superpowers, China and Japan, when they were still developing back then. In Japan, it was resisting Western influences after the World War. Traditional businesses were on the brink of collapse, and Japan was in danger of losing its cultural and heritage. As such, the government began to acknowledge those who refused to change. Despite they suffered economically wise, yet they were appreciated by the government and those who understand the value of extended family as seen in the Tomishimi Bar, a homely place. As for China, it focuses on the struggles of population in the major cities and in the harsh policies such as the one child, one China rule, one child, one family rule. And we can see that Chengzin family suffers that no living space, and Chengzin also faces the pressure of getting married, unable to find the right one. As you can see, he is forced to leave her back in the village due to the government ordering him back to move in the city. Through the comparing of both texts, we can see that the problems faced by both individuals are universal and are timeless, as they happen in a difference of about half a decade. Both authors make a realistic yet fictionalized retelling of the story about what the common people faced during the time of great challenge in their respective country. What we can learn from both texts is that though the change towards modernization brings advancements in technology and economy, it also forfeits traditional family values such as love for other human beings and focuses more on materialistic gain as well as pressure to perform. As a result, we can see how it causes emotionally strain on those living in those times. It is not surprising that modern ills such as depression and suicide are often high in big cities, as traditional values should not be snuffed out, as done in the China's cultural revolution. Instead, traditional values should complement that of modern values, as they will create a more wholesome environment for people in general. As example is how present-day Japan has incorporated their age-old values such as the 5S values such as Shiri, Shiton, Shiosu, Shiokutsu, and Suke that are practiced in the office and also adopted by our Malaysian government. And that is all.